Welcome back. I'm Dr. Slater Sarah. This continues our mini series on discussing the African family, African personality development in America. In the previous unit, we discussed a quote by Amos Wilson, who identified that for African children to be truly intelligent, they must be nurtured in African-centered environments, and most importantly, their caretakers must embrace African-centered reality. We also identified in the non-Afrocentric approach the standard of the European worldview being the foundation. Under this non-Afrocentric approach, the European worldview being the foundation for a conceptual framework for understanding the African family. That the norm of reference will tend to be the European American family that's used as a norm or standard, which emphasizes male dominance, patriarchy, and patrilineal progression in the family. Also, the nuclear family being limited to the structure of the father, the mother, and the children. And that this Eurocentric model, a non-Afrocentric, pure Eurocentric model African family also looks at the African family from a deficient state, articulating that the African family is deficient in that it oftentimes has female heads of household, where the women are masculine, and the men are irresponsible and inadequate in terms of their roles. In this pure Eurocentric model, it also emphasizes the idea of broken family homes, welfare dependents, as well as poverty-stricken families that lead to the defective socialization of African children, juvenile delinquency, etc. So very much like we've discussed in previous chapters, taking a pejorative, very negative perspective related to the structure of the African family. And this running script has happened throughout psychology and psychological analysis of the African family. So we also took a look at some pseudo Afrocentric models of the African family, which again utilize a European worldview in its basic conceptual framework and identify that the Black family is something that is made in America. And based on this made in America phenomenon, there's an emphasis on inferiority of the African family. Oh man, wrong way. That the state of the Black family, based on a Eurocentric model, is considered deficient. And the same as a pure Eurocentric model. And that it reflects a role
flexibility.
So from an Afrocentric model of the African family, we have what Kambon identifies, Kambon identifies as one of the most consistent and strongest Afrocentric voices in African Black psychology, Baba Wade Nobles. And Baba Wade Nobles should not be a new name for you, because we have talked about the strength that Baba Wade has brought to the field of African Black psychology in several mini lectures. But Wade Nobles, again, the most consistent and strongest voice in African Black psychology, in his work made a significant contribution to the concepts related to the African family. So Wade Nobles viewed the traditional African family as comprising of several households making up a particular community. He talked about and identified some of the major traits of the African American family. And some of those include a continual flexibility in circularity and extended kinship structure, which we talked about earlier, the difference between the Eurocentric model of the family structure is the nuclear family, mother, father, children, whereas in a traditional Afrocentric family structure based on Wade Noble's work, he suggests that the family is an extended family, also that it is circular, meaning always flexibility in terms of taking care of family coming in and out of the home. Some of you may have examples of that in terms of, who stayed with grandmama them, who stayed at your house, etc. But it's family kinship. And then in considering the kinship structure, we also have the cousins and the play cousins. We got the real cousins, then we got the play cousins, who we treat as family as well. In the African family structure, Wade Nobles identifies these 8 key points, including role flexibility, the strong mother role as it relates to the survival of the family. Meaning having a strong mother is central to family survival, which is very different than the Eurocentric or pseudo-Afrocentric model of looking at the African family. Nobles discuss the importance of child rearing and the strength of the mother role in terms of family survival. The importance of children and motherhood. So the purpose of family is child rearing. The purpose is to continue the clan, the biogenetic family, nation, race, etc. So the purpose is the continuance of the family clan, and the purpose of the union is procreation and for that continuance. So in African traditions, birth is seen as a reincarnation of the ancestors, and siblings are responsible for each other and they have mutual accountability. Also, the family, the comprehensive family, serves as a buffer for children from the European worldview. Wade Nobles also discusses the communalistic socialization of children. Some know the standard proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. So when we talk about communalistic socialization, the child is exposed to several socialization processes and is treated as a member of extended family. And one example of a socialization process includes a child going through rites of passage from childhood to adulthood for boys and girls. Wade Nobles also addresses the spiritual over material values. This is all consistent with the African worldview. So the spiritual values being important, whereas being connected to the collective defined one's membership and value in the family, not how much property you own or what you look like. Nobles identifies the role of the elderly as being very significant in the structure of the African family. And the elders play a role in governance, in an education of the family, and in education of the children. Very different from the Eurocentric concept, where elderly are removed from the home and placed into elder homes. Finally, we have part of the major tenets of the African American family being a strong sense of humanness, where their qualities of being loving, caring, belonging, helping, supporting, and security and protection are emphasized based on Noble's work. So his model also discusses, again, what we looked at earlier, that the African family is unique, but the African American family is unique in that it is African in nature, meaning the foundation or the structure of the family is African, and it is American in nurture. He identified 4 major issues of understanding for the African family, and also some of the special features that are found in African American families. So he identified in terms of Noble's work that the Black family is unique, enjoying its own inherited resources, that the family performs both social and psychological functioning, and some of its features may be situational, but we always are able to adapt. And in periods of crisis or ceremonial times is when the nature of the African family is most visible. So you see the family as the strongest during that time. So we, again, different households, different structures. And he identified this importance of these 7 parenting techniques for raising African American children. But first, he identified that the African family, of course, as we mentioned before, is the African family in America is comprised of several individual households. And if you think about your family, what is that family structure? Structurally, the family in America expands and contracts. Elasticity based on situation. The child rearing, the family system is child centered in its organization. And the function of the African family is, of course, the continuation of the lineage, but also reflects networking, close relationships, and roles are often very clear, but they're also flexible. And we also have multiple parentage in different households. So Nobles identified that the 7 parenting techniques for child rearing practices should be based on unconditional love. That means that the parent should love the child unconditionally and take every opportunity to use and develop the child's consciousness and recognize that the family spirit is ever present and the family bond is unbreakable. Reciprocity, so parenting based on reciprocity, where the parent must reinforce in their child a sense of interconnectedness and interdependence. The African family should also allow the determination of what happens to the child and allow the child to understand their own decision making. There also is a suggestion of parenting based on restraint. African parents should reinforce in terms of their child a sense of collective effort and family group accountability. But also African parents should develop family rituals and practices that encourage collective work and mutual responsibility amongst the children based on Noble's work. That could mean that responsibility is taking out the trash or cleaning the dishes or making sure the ancestor plates are made and put on the ancestor altar. So parenting based on adaptability, and that adaptability means that we reinforce in the child their unlimited potential and capability through allowing them space for imagination, for creativity, for spontaneity. And the family, African parents should develop family rituals and practices so that they can understand who they are. Parenting based on inclusivity, again, based on Noble's work, is where the child is reinforced because they know that they belong. And again, ritual and practice should be reinforced in terms of the importance of the child's membership in the family. And finally, parenting based on respect, where the parent reinforces in their children a willingness to acknowledge and respect the accomplishments and achievements of each other. And also reinforcing a sense of self-respect, appreciation for the feelings of others, and honor for the status and the wisdom of elders in the community. Other African-centered theorists include Kambon and his contribution to, where's my timer? Kambon's contribution to African families. Actually, in all of this, did some analysis of the effectiveness of all of the theoretical approaches to the African family. And in Kambon's work, he emphasizes the importance of the development of a strong African self-consciousness in Black parents. He argues that only African-centered Black families can contribute to real liberation and survival. Real liberation, survival, and cultural development of the African family. And that is very important because the idea is that when you're raising children, you want to raise children, get a family, that your consciousness your wokeness is important. You should have a strong African self-consciousness. When you have a strong cultural identity, you know who you are. Therefore, you can teach your children who they are. He emphasized the importance of African-centered family home environment, meaning that every room and every place that an African child walks into, they should see images, beautiful images of themselves, statues, things like that, that are related to African culture, the beauty and grace of African culture. Children should be, and the family should be inculcated with values and rituals and activities that awaken and strengthen their spirituality, that African self-extension orientation, and their African self-consciousness. And these rituals and activities and values in the home environment should consciously affirm dignity, integrity, and self-worth. So you see the beauty of Africa in the home environment, in the spaces, then the child becomes socialized to understand the beauty in Africa. Therefore, they feel better about themselves in this social environment. This is a review from a previous video where we talked about the socialization of the African child, and to develop a strong African self-consciousness. Let's see here. Laser pen. To develop a strong African self-consciousness, the child must be socialized in African-centered environments. And if that means if the child is socialized with African cultural rituals, celebrations, icons, and resolution rituals, they will develop a strong sense of their self, a strong emphasis on nation building and affirming African identity. It is only when children are socialized in Eurocentric environments, emphasizing Eurocentric icons, that they develop a weak African self-consciousness and ultimately develop cultural misorientation, which causes a problem in the development of their identity. So how we expose African children to these environments is understand first the centrality of African worldview. We must understand that in order for African people to function, we must interpret or analyze our behaviors through the worldview system and understand the difference between Eurocentric worldview norms and African worldview norms. Understand the importance of the extended family structure, the kinship structure, and for optimal functioning for the African child and the African family is a comprehensive exposure to strong African identity, strong African ideals, strong African culture. So when the child develops, they understand who they are and do not question who they are. How African children are developed in African social spaces, again, are going through these life cycle ceremonial rituals, including conception rites, naming ceremonial rites, childhood ceremonial rites, adolescence rites of passage, which we'll look at, I think, briefly. I don't know what the time is. Adulthood initiation rites, middle age, elevation, the rites process, even transitions the adult who has passed on into ancestralhood, very important to understanding the African cultural identity. It doesn't seem as if my video is going to play. So these are just some images of African-centered rites of passage. And we will continue. And, oh no, that concludes this unit for chapter 12. Thank you. And if I didn't say it, I am Dr. Slater Sarah. Peace.